Okay, check. See if this is working. All right, guys. Hope you're having a wonderful day. All glory to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. In this video, we're going to go over supply and demand creation, how that translates into structure supply and structure demand creation, and even liquidity points for POIs, because these models are incredibly dependent on POIs. You will not have high probability models if you aren't coming into a significant POI. So I want to go over what that means and how to identify them. What we need in order to confirm a POI is what's called a fair value gap. So you need at least 3 candles for a POI creation. So let's just select these 3 here. So they're clearly there's a demand creation there. A fair value gap is where you have a candle in the middle here, and you have 2 candles, 1 candle on each side of it, but the wicks have what's called a fair value gap, and that is present here. So we got a fair value gap right there between those 2 wicks. And this is what you're going to be looking for to confirm supply and demand creation. Even with structure supply and structure demand, it is not possible to have verified supply and demand without the fair value gap. So this is your fair value gap, which will confirm that this is demand. This is demand. And you can see it gets mitigated here. You get a nice strong reaction. It just shoots right back up, and that's how you know it's a valid POI, is once you're starting to get reactions near it or in it. And we'll go over that when we are entering our models. So yeah, so that's a created supply. What I do when I find a POI is I like to dig a lot deeper into it. So as you can see, we're on the month timeline. So when we're trading, we want to look for what's called a true inefficiency, which I think I found one on a chart that I'll bring up here soon. But let's go over a couple of, let's try to find some more POIs here. Here, there's one right there. That's great. Kind of all over the place. And you want to see if there's reactions coming off of them. So these 3 candles here, you got 1, 2, 3. These 3 candles right here, 1, 2, 3. And we can see that there is a supply creation here because why? We have a fair value gap between this wick and this wick. Fair value gap. Boom. So now we know that, well, sorry. Yeah, that's a fair value gap too, but we're looking at this one specifically, sorry. This fair value gap, which means that this is created supply. I hope that makes sense. It hasn't been tapped into yet, so we can dig into lower time frames to see if it's been mitigated, which I'm sure it has, and we're getting ready to do. But even this right here, what I highlighted before, this is still valid supply. It's just not as refined because there's still a fair value gap. And so when I'm marking out supply and demand POIs, I do start with these broad strokes here. And I just start whittling my way down. So we got the 2 week. Let's go look at this. Has it been, we're just going to look at the supply for now, just so it's easier to look at. All these concepts apply with demand as well. But okay, so we can see that the fair value gap is still there. Hasn't been fully mitigated. Let's go down to the week. Oh, this supply, this one big one, isn't so valid anymore, um, because it's actually been moved down to here. You see? So this was a verified supply still, because we had a fair value gap right here. Obviously, it gets mitigated over here. Whoops. So it's no longer valid anymore because it's been tapped into. And you can see there was a nice little reaction coming into it. But it was a technical technical supply order block. Zoom into the 5-day. Same thing. So this becomes a little bit more valid because we have what I'm looking at now, structure supply. And structure supply is basically the same thing. You can see we get almost a crazy reaction at the end of the structure on it. But you basically just, this is why market structure is so important, because you would trace the market structure with this to identify structure supply. So let's do that. Start here just because, might as well. So I go up, I'm looking for two consecutive ascending candles, which we got plenty there. I'm going to go to this high here, which is now confirmed because I see at least two consecutive downward candles. All right, so that's it. I see two consecutive white candles here, right? And then I'm just going to go to the next fair value gap, which is right here. So this this technically actually isn't structure supply, but that's what you would use for identifying structure supply. The reason why it's not structure supply is because at this market, at this structure low here, it's getting mitigated by this wick here. So structure supply and demand took me a long time to understand, but now that I do, it's easy to pin out. I just look for these fair value gaps and I see them right there. Boom. So let's keep zooming in. We've got the 3-day. We got the day. I'm going to hit replay just because it's easy to manage these bars to where they're not going to just keep going. We're going to take this as far into our timeline as we can, as far like all the way down to the 1 minute if we can. If we can find what's called a true efficiency, meaning there's a fair value gap present in the higher time frame all the way down to the lower time frame, there usually is a strong reaction from those points. And we can go into the overlapping effect, which is what we're going to do right here. So this is technically structure supply. So you can see, this might be really hard to understand at first because it was for me. But you can see how this area here is mitigated right here. All those bars get crossed, or that initial supply gets crossed. So that means the buying or the selling power from market makers and the whole market is represented in this block here, which is actually now technically structure supply, because we can see we got our market structure low. So we're going from high to low. We got two consecutive blue candles, followed by two consecutive white, followed by two consecutive blue. So right here is our structure supply, and what's present is our fair value gap between this point here and that point there. See? And it hadn't been tapped yet. So this was confirmed structure supply, which is usually a stronger POI than just an order block. I pay attention to pivot points. A pivot point is something like this where you can see structure. You can see that, okay, this was coming up and it's going down, rather than an order block just in the middle of nowhere. Say, for example, something like this, an order block that's in the middle of nowhere that has a fair value gap. That's not going to be a high probability point of interest typically, but sometimes I still mark it to see if I get a reaction from it, which we did here. So let's just keep zooming in. I'm going to delete this because I don't need it, because I know that that selling power is represented by the overlapping effect. Oh no, internet. Don't do it to me. Okay, 10 hours. So we still got a fair value gap that hasn't been tapped yet. In fact, it's actually gotten a little bit wider. 8 hours, 6 hours. And sometimes I'll even come in here and mark in some refined areas here, like this order block, for example. Yeah, it's mostly created by time, but I'm seeing a ascending white candle there, which might indicate structure supply later down the line. But let's go in. 4 hours. I just keep refining. 4 hours. 3. Everything's still present with the fair value gap. See? Still there. Still present. 2 hours. And I'm even seeing some structure supply up here that could possibly be there with this order block. So when I'm going through, I'll mark all this until I'm satisfied, because I'm mostly looking for a reaction from these areas anyway, and all these efficiencies want to be filled. Uh, the market just does that. It doesn't like these inefficiencies, so it for whatever reason the algorithms just go right into them eventually. So it helps you understand. Cool. So I'm loving that this structure supply, this higher time frame structure supply, hasn't been mitigated yet. Pretty powerful. But you can see that this refined area has been mitigated. So I'm putting way less emphasis on it already because it's already been tapped into. 30. Okay, now we're getting into the nitty gritty. The nitty gritty. Let's see. Still valid though. Why is it valid? Because we still have a fair value gap right here. Still have a fair value gap. 15 minutes, 10. I mean, do we really have a true inefficiency at this point? Not so much. The fair value gap got pushed to here now. So we still have a true inefficiency. It's just moved. You can see because our original, here, let's back it up a second. This, this fair value gap has been mitigated by this candle here. See how I went straight into it? So therefore, it's no longer valid in that area. But it's still valid because we still have a fair value gap. It's just smaller now, but it's still there. So it's still an inefficiency. What we want to find is a true inefficiency. And on something on that high time frame, if it gets mitigated on, say, the 3 minute, 2 minute, and 1 minute, I'm less concerned about it not being valid anymore because the market, I mean, I'm looking for a reaction at the end of the day, is what I'm looking for. But we're still there. We're just zooming into the 2 minute now. Crazy. All right, down to the 1 minute. Did we find one? Sweet. That's called a true inefficiency. So let's back up to the 4 hour because that's a big area. I might pull this all the way around. So let's see what happened to the market when it tapped into this structure supply with a true inefficiency. I am going to get out of replay. Okay, that's my refined area that I had marked up. And this was my true inefficiency area. So let's see what happened when it tapped into it. Not the strongest reaction, but still a reaction. You can see it. Price did get affected. It hit and went down a bit, but not crazy reactions. Sometimes they're really wild reactions. But that's how I look for structure supply and structure demand. Let's go look at one that I had set up for just as an example. previous efforts. Okay, so this is on the 4 hour. You can't see it, but I'd already refined it all the way down to whatever it is. So I'm gonna look for here. Yeah, I think I stopped it at, yep, so this was a 45-minute order block. And I think I stopped it there. Let's see what happens when I keep zooming in. Maybe I kept it because there was a true inefficiency. Yeah, I think it becomes structure supply. And that's why I kept it, or structure demand, sorry. And that's why I kept it probably on a lower time frame with a true inefficiency. Okay, so let's follow our structure, our market structure. We're down here, we got 2 white, confirmed by at least 2 blue. Same thing here, 2 white, confirmed by at least 2 blue. So that's our structure. That's our structure. And there's our inefficiency with the fair value gap right there. Let's keep going. 3 minutes. Guys, I'm telling you, this concept took me a long time to understand. I'm not sure why. Hopefully this helps you understand a lot faster than than when I did. But I just didn't get it, and it bothered me. It took me a long time, but now that I get it, it's pretty easy. You just keep looking for the fair value gap that exists in all time frames. So yeah, this was a true inefficiency. Let's look to see how the market reacted to it, if it did. Sometimes it don't, but that's your highest probability anyway. um, is a true inefficiency for a market to react to it. And it did. Look at that. Look at that massive reaction from it. So you found your true inefficiency. The market price came into it and just shot right back up. Isn't that wild? Um, so yeah, so that's how I look for structure supply, structure demand, just demand and supply creation in general. You look for the fair value gap, which confirms that it's actually supply and demand. I did a similar thing down here. I don't know if that's a true inefficiency. Maybe it is, but pretty cool to see an awesome reaction from that. Um, Now let's talk about liquidity, because liquidity are the points that you follow with market structure. So market structure is like the higher highs and lower lows and lower highs and lower lows. Um, so this would be considered a liquidity point right here. Let me mark that up right here. And we can see as we follow price across, we had a nice reaction from it. Price always wants to come back for liquidity at some point. Liquidity is just where it's easiest to buy and sell the asset. So you'll see these liquidity points all the way across every asset. And this shows you how price is behaving, not only psychologically with retail, which is very little, but mostly market makers. Retail, you and I cannot move the price. Billions and billions and billions of dollars are what moves these price. We're simply identifying the market manipulation with the market makers, and we're going with the flow, and we're just catching our wins based on their setups at the end of the day. So that's a liquidity point that got taken out. These are liquidity points that are getting taken out. And this is how we can identify price exhaustion as things keep going down and they don't go down so much anymore. So we'll get into liquidity and why and how we use that in our trading in a future video. The purpose of this video is for you to help you understand points of interest, supply and demand creation, finding the true inefficiency, and then looking for a reaction from that. Again, points of interest, supply and demand creation, finding the true efficiency, just to look for a market reaction. Liquidity we'll get into later, but I just wanted to drop that seed now that they are still points of interest, because markets will come for them. They're like magnets. All these things are like magnets. Liquidity, supply and demand are like magnets for price. It's just a matter of how they get there. So I hope that this was helpful. I know this one is a little bit more complicated to understand. I mean, it was for me. Maybe it's not for you. So God bless you. But let me know if you have any questions in the content section of the Discord, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. Respect. Jesus loves you. Do not forget ever, ever that we give everything to Jesus, and He died for us. So we're going to live for Him. And the point of all this is just to extract some money. hopefully money from the wicked, and then we get to tithe more, slash maybe even come together and get some really cool biblical churches out of debt together. And yeah, we will do our part to push the gospel forward. Anyway, God bless. Respect.